Hello everyone, in today's tutorial we're going to guide you through the process of installing and managing Passbolt Password Manager. Passbolt is a password manager for Teams. It's open source and also can be self-hosted using the Community Edition. The system we're going to use today to host the Docker Passbolt container is Ubuntu 22 desktop. We're going to use Docker Engine and we're going to use Portainer. The prerequisites to install is of course Docker. We also need a SMTP server or SMTP server details. We will be installing a browser extension. We also need Docker Compose together with Docker. We will need SSL certificates for our HTTPS web interface and also DNS names so we can access our Passbolt easily using a name. So let's start with the first step, that is installing Passbolt as a Docker container. We have here our Ubuntu 22 desktop. Let's check that we are running the correct OS. Ubuntu 22. Let's verify we have Docker running. Run a Docker ps command. Okay, since that we have Docker ps running, please also verify your user using the Docker commands are in the Docker group, so you don't have to use sudo to run the command. And let's go to the installation process. So we are here at the Passbolt installation guide from their webpage. This one is for Docker installation. You can see also the same requirements stated here. And let's jump to the first step of the installation. So first we will download the Docker Compose file for Passbolt. Okay, we have that file downloaded. Next, we will download a hash checksum to verify that the file we have is the correct YAML file. Okay, we have the hash file also downloaded, and now we will run this command to ensure the hash is correct. We got an OK. If you get an OK, that's the right Docker Compose file with the right checksum. Next step is to configure the Docker Compose file. So let's open the Docker Compose file and see its content. Here in the Docker Compose file, we can see that there will be two images downloaded and run. First one is for a database and second one is for the Passbolt application. Next thing we need to see is the base URL. We need to adjust the base URL to the one that we'll be using. I will change that to localhost, just to see on our local machine that Passbolt is working. Next, check the ports. This is the ports that the container will be using. We'll be targeting port 443. A very important step here is to verify that your operating system, when you run Docker, does not listen to these ports for any other application. So you can check that by running a netstat command. Let's see, first port 80 doesn't seem to be used. Now let's check port 443 and also seems to be not used. So please verify the ports are not used before running the Docker Compose. The Docker Compose also will create 3 volumes. One volume for the database, one volume for GPG keys, and another for GWT. Let's go back to the guide. Another step you need to do before you run Docker Compose is to add a mail server variables to your Docker Compose file. So the email server variables, I already have it ready. I will copy it from here. And we need to put them under environment. So email default from name, from address, the mail server IP or name, the mail server port, and my server specifically also needs the default client. But important part here is the default client should be different from the base URL. So I'm just going to state the server name instead. Let's just check that the email server is working. Always check your settings before running them. Okay, answer to ping. And also let's verify that port 25 is open on the email server and is accessible. Okay, looks good. Okay, I think we have all the settings in the Docker Compose file ready. So the next step in the guide is to use Docker Compose to run the Docker Compose file. For this tutorial, I'm going to use Portainer to graphically manage the Docker. It's just more simple to do that. So let's go to Portainer. I'm going to create a custom template for Passbolt. And I'm going to paste the Docker Compose file here. And save the template. Once the template is saved, I can deploy it as a stack. Okay, it says that stack is deployed. We should now see our containers are running. So we can see we have 2 containers are running. One is for the database and one is for the Passbolt application. Let's verify that the Passbolt application is working by opening the base URL. The Passbolt comes with a pre-installed SSL certificate, so it's okay to continue. And we can see that our application is working. You do not need to enter your email at this step. You will first need to create a new user. That's the next step in their guide. You can use again Docker Compose with the same Docker Compose file to run the command. The command will execute a command inside of the container with your new admin data. I have already the command configured for our user. So I'm going to use this email address for my first user, the first admin user, and this username. So instead of running Docker Compose, I will use again Portainer to run the command inside that container. So I'm going to execute inside of the console. Take this command. That is basically a slim down command from this point. And run it inside the container. Once I run the command, I get a registration link here that I can copy and open inside our browser. Now it would like to install the browser extension. Passbolt will need a browser extension to work. It supports all major browsers, Firefox, Chrome, and Edge. So let's go and install the extension and add it to Firefox. Okay, extension is installed, and we are going to the next step. So here it's first asked to create a master password for our user. Let's use this interesting password. Once we created our master password, we have a recovery kit for instances where we need to reinstall Passbolt or we need to move to a new server. It will require you the recovery kit for that. So please save the file of the recovery kit in a safe place. I'm just going to rename it so we know it's for user 1. Okay, we have the recovery key saved, and we go into the next step. Now we can choose a security token. Security token is some kind of a visual representation of your user, just to verify it's you. So you can choose any free letters in any color and go to the next step. Okay, so we created our user and the Passbolt application is running. We can now start saving our passwords by clicking the create command, new password. It even will tell you if the password you choose is a weak password or it's been stored in a breach database available to the public. And almost every action in Passbolt, you will need to verify it by your master password. Here we go. Here's our first password saved. Let's take a look. How can we use it in a different web application? Let's use this small application. It's a web file browser. So as you can see, once you go to any web page, you will now have the Passbolt browser extension here that you can click. You can create new credentials for this URL, or you can already enter a credential. And click Save as New Credential. It will create the username and password for the URL you're currently at. You can change the name, verify the password, and save it. Okay, it's now been saved into Passbolt. Let's close that. Let's delete that. Let's check in our Passbolt manager. We can see the credential has been saved with the correct password, the correct URL, and we can now use it here by clicking the browser extension and selecting it by the correct name. And that's it for the first installation and first usage of Passbolt. Now we're going to go to our second step of the guide, is installing our own SSL certificates. So currently we are using the self-signed certificate that is provided by Passbolt. I already have two certificates ready for Passbolt. You will need, of course, a server certificate and a private key. So how do we use them after we deployed our Passbolt, or we already have a Passbolt running with the default certificate and we would like to replace them? So we need to go back to our Docker Compose file. You can also see that in the guide. You can check the how to configure HTTPS with mount certificate in Docker. So the guide will also show that you will need two files: the server certificate and the private key stored on your operating system. And then you will need to set the certificate and the key path in your Docker Compose file. So let's go to our Docker Compose file and add those two certificates. So I already have these two settings ready. They're pointing at a location on our OS. That's this same location of these two files. And this is the place where it will reside inside of the Docker container. So using the guide, you will see that you need to specify it under volumes. So let's go to our Docker Compose file and put it under volumes. Save that. Okay. Now again, because I'm using Portainer, I will do it using Portainer and not Docker Compose command. So I will need to go back to my Portainer, go to the right container. Go to the template and add the two certificate files location under volumes. So I'm going to take these two lines also to my Portainer template. And save it. Now the next step will be to delete the currently running containers, delete these two. Don't worry about the settings or the data. As we can see from the Docker Compose file, we created volumes. The volumes are persistent. They're not going to be deleted. If you delete the container, they still will remain here. So let's go and delete the currently running Passbolt container. Okay, the container are deleted. As you can see, the volumes are persistent. They're not going to be deleted. So we can run again the template and it will use the same data because of the persistent volumes. Let's just again verify our settings. So we have the two files set up. One thing that we missed is we also need to change the base URL to the exact name inside of the certificate. Let's take a look. What is the name inside the certificate? Okay, the common name is passbolt.centraldomain.lan. So let's change the base URL to the name that you have in your certificate file. You will also have you will also need to have DNS record for the IP address of the server running the Passbolt container. Okay, the template has been updated. Let's deploy it. Okay, the template has been deployed. Let's see, we have again our two containers running. And now let's see if we can access the Passbolt using our new URL. Okay, we can see that the Passbolt is accessible. It now have our certificate installed. The certificate is verified. There's no certificate error. One note here, any change to the Passbolt will trigger a recovery mode. You can see that also in the manual here. If you change something in HTTPS, you will need to trigger a recovery. So let's go to the recovery process. So step one, we need to add a recover at the end of the Passbolt URL. Let's put the email address of our user, user1. Okay, now we need to go to our mailbox to get the recovery URL via the email. Let's open our web email for that user. User1. Okay, so we got our recovery email. We need to copy the link from the recovery button and paste it here in our browser. It will now ask for the recover key. If you remember the file we downloaded when creating our master password for our admin user. So we just need to paste the content of that file here. So let's open that file. Well, actually, we can just upload it. User 1 recovery kit, yes, select. And now our master password. We need to again choose a security token or use the one we used before. And we're back in the password manager. And now we have also our own certificate with our own domain name that we can use. That completes the step of installing an SSL certificate. Now we continue to our first step in the guide, administration. Let's do some administration task in our Passbolt. First thing we can do is add more users to the system. Let's go to users and create user. Let's create user 2. User 2. User 2 at zinteldomain.lan. Save. So once you create a user, that user will receive an email with login details. So let's go to workstation of user 2 and open user 2 email. Okay, we are in user 2 workstation. We are connected to as user 2 in our mail application. And it may take more than just a few seconds, maybe a minute. And we have the email registration for user 2. So again, let's copy the link and put it in the browser of user 2 workstation. It's going to do the same steps as user 1, install a Passbolt browser extension, also choose a master password. Going to use the same one. He also gets a recovery kit for his own username. Let's do user 2. And he will also select his security token. Let's try something else. And now he has his own password manager with no password at the time. He can add or create a password for his own. Now we said this is a password manager for teams. So let's see how can we share passwords across users. So let's go back to our user 1. Let's create a new folder. Let's create the folder, call it team. Let's, for example, we have this file browser that's used by all users. Let's move it to the team folder. And now we can share the team folder with our users in our Passbolt. So share user 2. He can only read, he cannot manipulate the passwords. We want him only to see. Save. Let's go back to user 2 workstation, refresh it. and you can see team is now visible in the user2 account, and he can see the password we share. So if he need access to the file browser, he does not know the password, we didn't give it to him by phone or whatever, you can now just use the password manager to access. Sorry, this is the wrong URL. You can now use the Passbolt password manager to access this web application without sending him a password via text or any other non-secure method. And that's it, he's in. We now can share multiple passwords for multiple systems instead of keeping some kind of a text document, Excel document, and sharing with the team. One admin can share passwords with his team members. One more thing about the administration part. Almost every action in Passbolt you will get notified. For example, you will notify that user 2 has activated his account. If user 2 starts doing any operation in Passbolt, you also get notified. Let's see the notification part of Passbolt. Let's go to administration and email notification. So you can see there's a lot of email notification here for every action taken in Passbolt. You can disable some of those because it will make too much emails sometimes for every operation that you or any other user do. Another administration here is enable multi-factor authentication 2FA for your users. Of course, it's more secure setting 2FA for your users. So that was the administration part. Next step in our guide is backup and restore. If you would like to backup our Passbolt for any disaster recovery and then restore it in a different server or different location. So for the backup process, should be simple. We go to the volumes created by our container. These are the two volumes created from our container. Let's take a look in the container. This is the GPG volume. If you take a look at the mount path at the operating system, you can see where the data is stored. There are two files here. So this is the first place you need to backup. You can create a script, maybe a tar or zip these two files and copy it to an offsite to a backup server. And the second thing we need to backup is the database volume. Again, if you go to the database volume, find the path on the file system. try to view it in a better. Again, there are files related to the Passbolt database. You need to back up this whole folder, or tar or zip this folder, and store it in a second location or an offsite location, so you will have more than one place stored. You can recover it. And the last part of our guide today, step number 5, is update. So to check what version you're currently running, you will need to execute this command inside your Docker container. So let's take a look. Let's go to containers, the Passbolt container, open the console and execute this command to check the version. You can see here the version currently running is 4.4.2. So the next step is check in Docker Hub what is the latest version of Passbolt. Okay, let's see the versions. We are using the CE version, the Community Edition. So it seems that the latest version is 4.4.2. The one before that was 4.4.1. Let's check this again. Oops, sorry. So we are currently at the latest because we just did the install. But for your environment, if it passes some time and you check that your version is 4.4.1 and you see that there's a new version 4.4.2, how do we update? So the process again is very simple. Because the volumes are persistent, all you need to do is just delete the current running container and deploy the Docker composed file again. Because the image is latest, it will get the latest version and install the latest version in your environment. Once that's complete, check again using the cat command inside your container. And that wraps up this guide for Passbolt. Hope you enjoy it. If you need more guides, please add it in comments. Thank you very much.